Welcome back to Middle Age Runner. I am Amit. Today we are diving into one of the most extreme endurance challenges on the planet, Marathon des Sables 31 from April 2016. Here's what MDS 31 was: 7 days in the Moroccan Sahara Desert, 257 kilometers, that's 160 miles, broken down into 6 competitive stages. Stage 1, 40 kilometers, your baptism of fire by carrying your heaviest pack. Stage 2, 41.3 kilometers, nearly a marathon which destroyed feet from day 1. Stage 3, 37.5 kilometers, mental preparation for what's coming. Stage 4, 84.3 kilometers, the monster long stage running through the entire night. Stage 5, 42.2 kilometers, a full marathon after 200 plus kilometers. Stage 6, the short charity stage celebrating survival. Temperatures were hitting 40 to 50 degrees Celsius, and here's the kicker: it's self-sufficient. You're carrying everything except water, all your food for the week, sleeping bag, medical kit, spare gear. Pack weight starts at 10 to 15 kilograms. 973 people finished MDS 31, 815 men and 158 women. These weren't all elite athletes. They were everyday runners, charity fundraisers, people proving something to themselves. Today, I'm privileged to speaking with one of those 973 finishers, Rebecca Drackley, a Birmingham-based ultra runner and a combat medic. Completed MDS 31 in 73 hours, 11 minutes of actual running time, placing 956th position overall and 153 in the women's 35 to 39 age category. Rebecca, welcome to Middle Age Runner. Okay, Rebecca, what made you decide to enter something that extreme?
So I remember when I was a teenager, there was a program on late night TV, I think on Channel 4, called Trans World Sport. And it used to have these really extreme sports and challenges. And that's when I first saw the Marathon des Sables. And at the time, well, it's all through my life I've struggled with mental health challenges. But I remember thinking, if I could do something like that, then I've fixed myself. You know, if I can get through something like that, that means I'm a strong person, and that's it really. And it parked it for years. You know, I didn't do this again for 20 odd years. But what really ignited it at that time was my school friend Susan Wright died swimming the English Channel, and and I remember when we were growing up, all she used to do was go swimming in the morning. She always smelt of chlorine, and I'd go riding horses. You know, that was my obsession. I was absolutely obsessed. I wanted to be the first woman to win the Grand National. And when she died, it just, I thought, you know, she backed herself. She was doing something that she was so passionate about. And I thought, well, I've parked that, you know, I've let life take me by and I've parked all of that. And I just thought, now is the time to back myself and do something, and not just say you're going to do something, like do it. And that prompted my sudden, after 20 years after seeing that TV program, impulse to do it. So that's why, in honor of
That's
Susan.
great. Uh, so you finished in 73 hours, 11 minutes. That's just over 3 days of actual running time. Take us through each stage and what it felt like.
Mm. So I remember stage one, it felt, it absolutely felt endless. Like, they've got this kind of warped thing how they plan the MDS, and when you actually come home and look at your GPS records and data, you realise you're just doing these big circles and loops around the same area, but you have no concept of that. It's like walking on a lunar landscape. But stage one was about 36K, and you're thinking, oh, that's easy. You know, even at a walk, that checkpoint time is easy because you can get timed out, and there's no You know, there's no argument with that. And you've paid a lot of money and committed a lot to be there. But we lost a lot of people in stage one because we had sandstorms, and it was like watching a Lawrence of Arabia film as a kid. You'd get to the top of this horrendous dune, and you'd think, right, now I can see the checkpoint, surely, checkpoint one. And you'd get to the top and you'd see the next four dunes, and there's no checkpoint. And every single time you got to the top, your heart just sank because you were sure this time. And I think that rude awakening for a lot of people, um, they quit on day one. They couldn't cope with that. We had a massive, I think it was the highest attrition rate ever up until that point, on day one and day two, because it was just, you just didn't expect it. If you hadn't done it before, you know, you really had to park your ego because it got you instantly, and you realised you're in this. And I remember on the morning of stage two, it was even worse because I knew what was coming. And they play Highway to Hell every morning just before they release you through the gates. And I just spontaneously just burst into tears, just quietly sobbing behind my glasses because I knew what was coming on day two. You know, now I knew. And yeah, uh, and my feet started to drop to bits, sort of day two and day three. And day four, wow, that was horrendous. And I think my day four, the long day, the 84 kilometre day, was longer than the female winner of the whole thing, like of the whole thing. And by then in my tent, 114, there was only me and Nick left, and this guy was 6'5", um, multiple Ironman triathlons, and me. And I sent him to the med tent to get a drip, and he just looked shocking. I was like, God, you need to go and get on a drip. And he did, and it was only me and him finished from our tent. Um, but yeah, I you know, it's a decade this week since I did it, so hazy memories, but just agony. Every step was torture from day one, really. Um, so yeah.
That's great. I obviously I've run a couple of marathons, and I understand when sometimes you do a race and you go into a race, sometimes you think the second one might be a bit easier, but because you know what's coming, it actually becomes a lot more harder, right? Because I don't know if
Yeah,
you've ever heard of Ashby 20. So Ashby 20 is like rolling
I've done
hills,
it.
and you got
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's a 2 lap course, and the first
Mm,
time you go
I
around, you're
know.
thinking, yeah, it's right, but the second time it's obviously a lot more on tired legs, and you know what's coming, so it's obviously double hard sometimes you feel.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's where I grew up.
so you went in the
Ashby is my
35 to
man.
39.
Mm.
So you went in 35 to 39 age category. In those extreme conditions, how much does age factor in?
I think it helps to be a bit more mature. I mean, it's ultra running. It seems to lend itself to some more mature people. Um, the following year, I think one of the guys from the next tent, quite a famous ultra runner in the things he does. Like he did the MDS dressed as a red devil, which wasn't a good idea that year because it was really hot. But his son went on to be the youngest to complete the MDS, I think, the following year, and I think he was 17. Um,
Oh, wow.
but I think maturity helps because it's you've got that resilience, and I know female ultra runners tend to peak around the middle age mark. You know, you see like Leadville 100 and things like that. It's the more mature um, people that have great success. Bit like the Tour de France used to be. You know, it used to be you're not
Yeah.
winning a Tour de France when you're 21. You're winning it. You know, when you're a bit older. So no, I think it's actually it's not a barrier. I think it's the opposite. because you've got that I think you've got probably more mental strength, and that's what you need. Because if you're sort of a 7 minute mile runner at home, something I never have been unless I'm just doing 1 mile. But if you're that sort of runner and you've got that, that sort of young ego, you that will go as soon as you hit the desert and you suddenly got a 10 kilo, 8 kilo pack on your back. You know, you suddenly become quite, well, not average because it's such a test, but to then suddenly be doing 10 minute miles, or in my case, I think I was probably doing sort of 17 minute miles. I was literally limping around most of it. And I think maturity helps you because of the things you've got through in life generally. So it's a bit of a metaphor for life, the MDS. And a lot of people that do it uh, have their demons. A lot of people have been to some dark places, and the MDS is kind of a really self-flagellating therapy session. It's probably a lot easier way to to get through things like that. But that's it. It has that draw. So
No, that's great. Um, so it was 257 kilometers. But what were you actually carrying
mm,
for all those 257 kilometers? Because I'm guessing you weren't just running.
no, well, I never ran. To be honest, the old I yomped or tabbed, which is the military. Basically, well, I'd like to say I was speed marching, but that didn't happen. Like I said, I was limping. So my pack weight, I would always have probably 3 kilos of water at any one time, because checkpoints, on paper you look and you think, oh, it's only 10k to that checkpoint. I'll be there in an hour, and you're not. It's 2 hours. It's 2.5 hours. You're going like this, and you're limping,
Yeah.
and you're carrying this weight, and it's 52 degrees. So you just cannot you cannot compare it to your normal run around King's Heath. Um, so you have things that you have to carry. You have to carry snake, anti-snake venom, you GPS beacon locator. You have to have a certain amount of calories of food. You have to prove that you've got enough food to sustain you. So, and obviously you're trying to make it light as possible. So you've got, some freeze dried food. I use some army rations. Um, you really don't have any spare clothes. You literally you've got your race suit, and that's it. And you don't change. You probably might treat yourself to an extra pair of pants, an extra pair of socks, but people are so obsessed with the weight because you're carrying it for so much. I
Yeah.
remember I had a tiny little titanium stove, and it was like this big. I think it weighed about 50 grams, and it had these little fold out legs, and you just put one hexi block in, and that's how you heat your food. And then titanium jet boil and lid, and yeah, that was it. You just absolutely took the bare minimum. Um, didn't even take my phone, just had my watch, and yeah. So there's things you have to, and the first 2 days in the desert is an admin day where they check your ECG, check your doctor support, check your death insurance, and check your kit to that you have to have these mandatory items and you have to have this many calories. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I think I was probably about 8, 9 kilos.
Wow.
Um,
When you said that you were carrying 2 kilos of water, what does that substantiate in liters? Because obviously you hear 2 kilos of water, but what does is that like at 5 liters, 10 liters, or
yeah, so I'd usually have sort of two bottles. Like we were handed these out at checkpoints. You'd usually get 2 or 3 at a checkpoint. Um,
okay,
so yeah, so it would be sort of probably 3 liters, 2 to 3 liters at
two to
any
three
one
liters?
time. And because I was super slow, By the time I got to the checkpoints, this was hot, and
Yeah.
there's nothing more grim than doing 257 kilometres trying to get salt tablets down you, which is another
Yeah.
mandatory item, with basically bath water. So you try, it's like, it wasn't nice cool water. It's been in the desert for days. It's warm water. So my biggest treat to myself, my luxury item was, I had like a bum bag at the front. It was part of the MDS pack that you got given. A lot of people wouldn't use them; they'd go and buy their own packs. But I thought, and I had just loads of mint humbugs and polo mints, and I was quite popular when people found out that I'd packed sweets. Um, so that was my luxury item. I think I probably had half a kilo of polo mints and sweets. I was like the St. Bernard dog from the old adverts, going around rescuing people with my polos. So yeah.
Quick one before we carry on. If you're finding this useful, hit that like button. It genuinely helps get this in front of more runners who need to hear it. And if you've got a question for Rebecca, or this is making you think about your own limits, drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and questions for Rebecca, I can pass them on. Subscribe if you haven't already. There's more content like this coming. Right, let's get back to it. So you ran for Canine Partners. So how did that charitable purpose affect your race? Did it give you more motivation?
Yeah, I think I ran for Spana, which is society of basically animals in sort of deprived third world countries, sort of working animals in Africa and parts of Asia, and the Canine Partners. Um, I was working with someone a couple of years before that had an assistance dog at work, and I've always my big real love is animals, and especially horses, and so when you commit, when you make that commitment and you say, look, I'm going to do this run for you. I've probably not got a lot of fundraising potential in me, but it focuses you, and it commits you. You've put it out there. You're doing it for a purpose, and yeah, you're not bottling out if you're letting other people down either. So,
Yeah,
um, and also I remember when I was doing my military training, um, doing basic training, and they really break you down during the military training, to build you back up again. And I remember thinking one of the worst traits to have, or worst moments to have, is feeling sorry for yourself. Self pity is a really, I think Oscar Wilde wrote a poem about a wild thing never feels sorry for itself. A wild bird can die frozen from the bough of a tree without ever having felt sorry for itself. And as soon as I sort of realised that, like, you choose to do the things you do most of the time, MDS, military training, like, you've got no right to feel sorry for yourself. You put yourself in this position, and as soon as you have that mindset change, you think, well, no, I'm it's a gratitude to be doing this. I chose to do it. But lots of people and animals don't have choice on this planet. And as soon as you sort of have that conversation with yourself, I think it lifts and enables you to just get on with it. Don't overthink, just get on with it and live in the moment and just get it done. So it's kind of in honor of that, things that have a right to feel sorry for themselves because they've not got a choice in the things to do. So it seemed
So
apt to do that, those charities.
so what was your training like for something like this extreme? So, take us through your training plan before. How long did it, when did it start? What was your weekly mileage? How did you gradually build up and to get there?
So I think I'm as well known for doing the MDS with our running club as I am for how not to do the MDS. So my character, I mean, I've since been diagnosed only a couple of years ago with ADD and ADHD, but I'm not typical. I'm quite typical for a female in that I live in my head. It doesn't translate into action a lot of the time. So I'm my worst trait is procrastination. And as soon as I never expected to get a place for the MDS. And then I think it was about July that I just got a random email, because it's very oversubscribed for the UK racers. And I got a random email saying, "Oh, we've got some reserved places. Do you want to do it?" And by then, I'd done my first marathon the year before. I'd just totally fallen to bits. The training had been brilliant, and then I got basically the flu the week before, and the spell was broken, and I wasn't training. I didn't have that training buddy that absolutely pushed me. And yeah, I broke the spell, and it wasn't my obsession anymore. So I got the email, and I just thought, oh God, well, I've got to do it because these places don't come up. But as soon as I accepted it, I just went into ostrich mode and deny mode. So I didn't train, is the honest answer. I had fitness because I played rugby to a pretty good standard. And I was, mooching about doing 10Ks and things like that. But I'm quite well known for not training and just winging it and suffering horrendously because of it. So what I actually did, I thought I need to test my kit and my resilience to be on my feet for that long, because it's not about speed. It's about, you know, it's not your cardiovascular system that's suffering if you're just a normal person doing the MDS. If you're not an elite, it's not that. It's your bones, your ligaments, your joints, your tendons. That's what suffers from the sheer volume of mileage. So I thought I'll do this Ashmi 12-hour ultra just till dawn. So I thought I'd just test my mindset if I can just keep going. So I did that and basically mooched around that. But I kept going for 12 hours. And then I did the Ashby 20 when I'd got all of my kit, packed all of my kit. I'd done the Ashby 20 a couple of times because it's very local. I only lived about 5 miles away. I grew up 5 miles away. So that was the first time I'd ever used walking poles on the Ashby 20. And I literally just wore everything I was going to wear for the MDS and completed that with my pack. But none of that really prepared me for what I found in the desert. So, but no, I am a textbook case of how not to train for any kind of race ever, because I'm terrible. That's probably why people thought I wouldn't be able to do it, and they're probably right. But I did.
That's great. Well, that's quite inspirational that you managed to do that and
I
not
wouldn't
and do
advise
with
it.
a very minimum amount of training. But to our viewers, that's probably not the best way of doing it. But
No.
but yeah, it's still quite inspirational. So during the race, I'm guessing you had high points and low points, right? Take us to the absolute lowest point. So I know in any long race, all right, speaking from not to the MDS, but in longer races, I always go through peaks and downs and thinking
Yeah.
I'm not going to finish this or I'm not going to. What was your lowest point and how did you come out to that?
I think day one, the absolute shock of just the huge landscape we were trying to negotiate. The dunes on day one were biblical, you know. And I think that the reality set in, and towing the line on day two, having that knowledge of how much it hurt, and my feet hadn't even dropped to bits at that point. My feet were in a good order. I just realised how badly prepared I was, and but I couldn't. I was not going to quit. So many people thought, "Oh, she's not got this in her," and I knew I was going to be in a lot of pain and I was going to suffer, but I put myself there. So I think day two, when I just burst into tears at the start line, was horrendous. And so many people jumping around, woohoo, woohoo, clad in the raid light, and that was not my vibe. And I'd lost a lot of very new friends, but people that I'd met, in the couple of days before, my tent mates, they were already gone. On day two, a lot of really lovely people had already been timed out, or just couldn't do anymore. So how I got out of it was really strange, actually. I remember the moment I knew I was going to do it, and I think it might have been day two or day three that you're 1,000 people walking in the Sahara. What are the chances you're going to meet someone that knows somebody that you know? And as I said, my school friend from play school, Susan, had died the year before, doing 2 years before, swimming the English Channel, and she'd got within 400-500 meters of the coast, and she just had a massive heart attack. She absolutely gave everything. And I was walking along, and I met this woman, middle-aged woman, reminded me a little bit of Barbara Partridge, got her stuff together, and I thought, God, I don't need to be like that woman, And we got chatting, and I remember the first thing she said to me was, I'm literally like a fish out of water doing this. What do you mean? She said, well, usually I'm swimming in the sea, and I train people to swim the English Channel. I've swum the English Channel. I was like, what? Really? I'm here. I've done this, signed up for this race this year because my school friend, died swimming the English Channel. And she said, oh, Susan? Yeah. She went, yeah, I trained Susan. I knew Susan. And in that moment, I just thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. I just thought this is just such a divine intervention. I just thought, yeah, I've got this now. It's going to bloody hurt. But after this meeting, 1,000 people from all over the planet in the Sahara Desert, and I've met somebody that directly trained, Susan to do something. I just thought, there's no way I can't do this. It's just not going to happen now. That's not how you finish this story. So,
Yeah. If I can just ask a follow-up question to that, is that so on the first day, obviously you guys were given a tent, right? How many runners were in that one tent?
so when you say tent, it's basically some big lengths of trees that the Bedouin tribesmen come along, and they put a rug down on the floor, and they put these, basically make a brace from these trees, and they just put rocks against them to keep them upright. They did fall down quite a lot, and then they literally put a rug over the top, and that's your tent, and it's completely open, on two sides. And how many did we have? Six of us in a tent, and you would literally be touching the people next to you. So I was in tent 114, and yeah, six. I'm pretty sure it was
So
six.
yeah, so when there were six people on day one, right, and then you could see the people getting less and less and less. How did that make you feel? Like, as you said earlier, that you were really not prepared for this, but
Mm.
like you think, obviously, I'm guessing some people were maybe fitter and maybe more prepared than you, and they still, got eliminated and they were coming out the tent. So how did that make you feel? Was that saying that I want to go on and do it, or was that putting more doubts in your mind?
No, I think it was sad because these were great people. One of them had previously completed it, and I think Tony, he would say he was probably a little bit complacent this time, thinking, oh, well, I've done it once, so I've got it in a tank. And Sarah, his partner, you know, me and a couple of others ran out of water on day one, and she was the only person who had water. We were walking together on day one, and she gave me some of her water, and I might not have finished the race if I hadn't have had Sarah's water. So when she when she got timed out, it was awful because she'd enabled me to keep going. So I think you think, well, I'm doing it for everyone else now. They might be in a lovely 5-star hotel that they put the Brits in, and they'll be there when I get back. So I want to go get back and have a medal, for them as well, because I'm here, and every day I don't come back to that hotel. Every day that they're there and they're thinking, oh, who's still in, who's coming back today, it's a win. So, and you had to just think, it wasn't even one day at a time. Literally right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. It was, you couldn't think that far ahead. You just had to
Yeah.
be in the moment.
So there it is, Rebecca's lowest point in the Sahara. 257 kilometers in. The heat, the weight, the doubt. And honestly, just hearing that reminded me why most people never even attempt something like this. But here's what I want you to think about. Before part 2, she finished. She crossed that line. So whatever happened after that lowest moment, something shifted. And in part 2, we'll find out exactly what that was. I'll see you there.